are these people?
Welcome, everybody. This is Collin Radix-Carter of INN. I'm normally here with Reef, but he's actually manning the boards today. But I am here with a man that I've been waiting to talk to for the last couple of years, Niko House. Pleasure to finally get to talk to you in this platform.
I appreciate the way you said that, Collin. Collin makes it seem like I've been dodging him for 2 years. That has not been the case. I've been waiting to talk to him for 2 years. Like, I ain't been answering the phone calls, responding to text messages. The first time, technically speaking, that Collin gave me an official time, I made it. So I just want to clarify that.
Yes. So, but it's good to finally be able to sit down, even though we're have some distance now, but it's good to finally sit down and being able to talk to you on my platform and being able to kind of check in with you. So there's been a lot, I think people may or may not know, there's been a lot that's been going on with you. And I was just sharing with you just before we came on air, how you're probably one of the only Black commentators I saw in the space in terms of, seeing someone like me being able to kind of share truth. And I want to say thank you for that, in terms of, what that meant to me in terms of trying to find people like me who kind of thought the way I was kind of thinking. And you definitely were one of those people that I found. But there's been things that have been happening that led you to move abroad. And that's something I actually want to talk to you about in terms of, your role in the space and how that's probably evolved now in terms of you not living in US anymore. So if you just want to kind of share with everybody, actually, I do want to ask you this, like, being I call you a vet in a lot of ways because you are, just who kind of started, this independent media space in a way that we all kind of know it now. What was it like, like pre-2020, you being a person of color, having the platform that you had and trying to grow your platform with MCSC at the time?
So I should say that I should probably clarify for a lot of people, like, what Collin probably is referring to is the fact that it was me and literally maybe one other person who we didn't come from CNN or MSNBC. We didn't come from TYT. We didn't have any major backers. And all the Black people in the space at the time, if there were any really, had come from a major platform or had some major financial backer. And I basically started what I did from scratch, beyond scratch. I literally just had like an iPhone 6 at the time, I think, and some headphones. And that was basically how my whole thing got started. But right before 2020, even during 2020, to be honest, Collin, it was kind of surreal, to be real with you. Like, I never thought that in 2, 3, 4 years, my platform would have grown to that degree. I never thought that. I guess I could have. So I assumed that I would have some type of influence in national politics because of situations and circumstances that had taken place prior to me ever having a major podcast or a major show. So my influence had always been direct, on the ground, organizing, activism,
Right.
that type of stuff. Never presidential candidates or Congress people watching my podcast, trying to figure out how they should craft their policies, or major players like TYT and Anna Kasparian getting super upset because of a video that I did and didn't go and ghost for 4 or 5 days after that. But we ain't gonna talk about that right now. Like, I never thought that in 3 or 4 years I would be able to become such a major player, not because of like a lack of talent on my part or a lack of willingness on my part. It's simply the dynamics, right? We know that when it comes to Black people in this particular space, if you don't echo a certain sentiment, if you don't parrot certain talking points, if you don't ingratiate yourself with certain individuals and police yourself to a certain degree, then you aren't really allowed, and I do mean allowed, to have that influence. You're not
Like
permitted
the hoes be
to
knowing.
have that level of. Say that again.
That's brief. Not playing with the
Oh, okay, cool, cool.
soundboard. So,
But I mean it, and so by the time I got to the like mid level or middle of 2019, having that influence in Tulsa's campaign, even having the level of influence in Bernie's campaign that people didn't even know I had, having at this point helping to build up the Convo Couch, who no one knew about in the beginning, and then you know because of my help and their hard work and putting together a very specific formula, like they blew up as well. I mean, at this point, their producer, Johnny Mayorga, is now the producer for Kim Iverson's show, which is obviously
right,
huge.
right.
So like, and these people are now like Pasta or Fiorella can go into many countries in Central and South America and get instant like clout and cachet when it comes to elections because of the work that they've done on the ground in these countries. So to have a level of influence that we ended up having, I didn't think that we would be allowed to. Now that usually doesn't stop me from doing something, obviously, but like the reason I didn't think that we'd be allowed to is because for the same reason that we never really got the credit that we actually deserved for a lot of what we did. And that's a whole different conversation, obviously, but I'm thankful. I'm very, very thankful. I'm very thankful because I had some people that really rode out for us from the very beginning. I gotta give a shout out to this wonderful woman. Her name is Grace. She's older, been following me since 2016. She literally like checks up on me like I'm her son. Like if I disappear for too many days, for too long, I get 3 DMs on Instagram or Facebook, and she's like checking in on me. So like people like that are really who kept me going whenever I was too in my head, or trying to think too much about like what I need to do to be seen. And because that's like a huge part of what we do is being seen. And it was hard to figure out what to do and what to say and how to deliver the same message when other people would literally just steal the message, corrupt it in a lot of ways, and then try to pitch it their way and then manipulate those individuals who are watching, because I actually care about what I do. And that's really a major difference from what I was doing in the beginning versus what everybody else. Everybody else is looking for a job. I didn't need a job. I have a degree from University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill, bro. I can work where the fuck I want to. Like I really can't. Like I'm just being honest, guys. I didn't need any of this. I did it because I cared, and I went homeless to do what I do.
So my follow-up to that is obviously, just kind of with the mess that we're kind of seeing now in independent media, and I think you've just been kind of watching, from the side. You've been watching. I know, like, I'm sure you've been watching, but like, how does it make you feel now? Like, I will say it, like, for us, INN, and I could probably argue RBN essentially kind of took your model in a lot of ways to kind of create
and they're giving me plenty of credit for that, by the way. Like I should just say, like, Dave,
but
y'all always show love, and I appreciate that. Seriously.
Right. But the idea of taking, obviously people having their own channels, but kind of coalescing around a network where you're able to share resources, guidance, but forming a community and what we call here in INN the family, and especially now given, like we're censored more than probably even back then, which is hard to believe, but but having people to just kind of counter that, but actually having, bulldogs that will stand up for you online or otherwise, in terms of, you say something that is not popular and people will come at you, that you have your group to kind of attack back. And I definitely saw that, with MCSC, like how you, Apostrophe, Misty and others, you kind of rallied around each other. And I think, I think especially for us and RBN and then others who kind of taken that model, I think that's kind of helped to kind of weather, the censorship that we've kind of all been going through in some way, shape, or form now.
Yeah,
but
that's really that was the main objective, was to figure out a way to get thrusted beyond the censorship. And I mean, for all intents and purposes, yeah, we still are censored, obviously. Like
Right.
Pasta just put out a tweet the other day saying like, yo, since it's acceptable to challenge the election now, and to question the COVID narrative, like, can we get our fucking monetization back? Because we were all demonetized at the exact same
Right.
time on the exact same day,
Yeah.
which nobody ever wants to talk about, which was like insane. But that's why it's important and to have those people to coalesce around and to push that message. RBN did a great job of it. INN does a great job of it. And I applaud you all because it's not easy when what you say isn't popular. Like unfortunately, we're not on the side where things that shouldn't be popular to say all of a sudden become popular to say because like it's like the acceptable parameters of discussion, right? Like I saw a tweet, I guess it was from the Vanguard, saying, I can't believe Sabs and who else was it? They said Sabby and Kim Iverson said that Crystal Ball was pushing for lockdowns. That's not true, except for like it was, and we all watched it happen.
Right.
But it's easy for them to go out and defend Crystal Ball, and people just accept it as what they say as being true now, because the idea of lockdowns and the fashion that took place seems absurd now. Except
Right.
for we were saying that then.
Man.
Vanguard would have never came to my defense or Fiorella's defense or Pasta's defense or Kim Iverson's defense then, or RFK Jr.'s defense then. They would have stood with Marianne Williamson, Crystal Ball, and TYT and all of them. But now it's acceptable.
Right.
So it's difficult to be on the right side of history when it's not popular, but it makes it a lot easier when you have a team around you.
Right. Yeah. And I have always noticed that one thing I've known about you forever, Niko, is the fact I call you basically Nicodamus in the sense of you always seem to kind of call out stuff 6 months to a year before it happens. And I think, and I'm not sure what kind of gifting. Well, I think you definitely are aware of the patterns. So, and I think a lot more people, fortunately, are kind of catching on to that now. But I do remember you saying some things back then that people were like, nah, like that, and like people were calling you everything but a child of God. And it's now coming to pass. I'm like, well, you know what? Like B was saying this back then. Niko was saying this back then, like you guys were really kind of way ahead of the curve in terms of.
But then you got to deal with the egos, right? I refuse to admit that Niko and Fee and I refuse. I mean, to be fair, I get it because like, yeah, I'm gonna talk shit because like of how much if we weren't attacked for the very basic commonsensical things that we were saying, then maybe I wouldn't be such an asshole about it. But now I'm like kind of an asshole about it because so many people, what they do is they attack us whenever we say something that isn't popular, but obviously it's true. They never attack the merits of our argument. They just attack us. That's all they do. They either call us conservative, or if it's a conservative, they call us, some neoliberal, whatever. And then when we're right, they pretend as if they always took that side with us, and then co-opt that message. They don't even do it the right way. Like when they get invited to debate their points, then like they get embarrassed because they don't actually know what they're talking about, because they didn't actually believe the same things that we believed, or they didn't have the same messages we had. They just saw, oh shit, it's the right time to be on this side. Like I give credit to Max Blumenthal when he came onto the right side regarding either whether it be COVID mandates or things of that nature. He actually gave us credit. He was like, oh no, the only reason, like he went on Jimmy Dore and Jimmy kept inviting him on to talk about it, but he was like, well, the only reason I even know about this type of stuff is because like MCSC, like they're the ones that could kind of pull me over to the light. Jimmy only knew about that type of, like Jimmy's life was saved specifically because Paz and Fiorella and Johnny were telling him like, you need to take ivermectin, bro. Like this has to happen, or you're not, like, this is why you're sick. And then, because remember, Jimmy was pro mandate at first,
right?
Like, and then he started changing his mind. Now, Jimmy, I think eventually did give credit, like during his live shows and things like that, to a few people, but like no one is ever going to bring on Niko House. Well, some people will, but like the big platforms are going to bring on Niko House or Pasa or Fee or Misty when we are right, and they all knew we were right, because of how much of this game, unfortunately, is based on whether or not people perceive you as always being correct, right? So if they perceive somebody else as always being correct, 1, they have to question everything you've been saying, but 2, they're going to go to those people instead of going to you potentially.
Right.
And then eventually that begins to affect people's bottom line, regardless of how much we may be friends or whatever, or how much they may support you. Like the majority, like these people, they have bills to pay, and some of them even pay other people's bills. That's how successful they are. And so the idea that me or you or Fiorella could be considered to be a person that is more right more often and very far in advance is a direct threat to their bank accounts. And that's just what it comes down to.
Right. Can you share, what's the status of MCSC now in terms
So at
of,
this point, everybody's kind of doing their own thing because Fiorella moved to Moscow. I'm
right.
pretty sure most of y'all know that. I was dealing with family stuff. My grandmother passed away. My grandfather passed away. This like happened all within a year of each other. And I
Yeah.
really had to help my grandmother move across the country, which was a task. Unfortunately, she passed away several months after she got to the East Coast.
Right.
But then I was just basically, I had decided after basically after we all really, but me too, got demonetized by YouTube. After like I was with RT, most of you all remember that.
Yeah.
And even though I still go on every now and then, we had to slow down because of the fucking Ukraine war, and the FBI was on all of our asses.
Right.
That's why you don't see a lot of Americans on RT anymore. You really don't even see people from the UK on RT anymore.
Right.
Like they literally they sanctioned every bank that was paying us.
Yeah.
It was like that. It was some serious shit. And so I had to lay low because of that. And then it was just like kind of a point to where I personally got, and they all know about this, like, because I talked to all of them about it, and they kind of to some degree felt the same way. But I was tired, bro. Like, if y'all know me, like, I've been going hard as shit since 2016. Like, not a little bit. Like,
yeah.
Pasta Fiorella, they started, I think, 2018, February 2018 is when they started their show. Like, I was going hard, dropping 2, 3, sometimes 4 or 5 videos, in-depth analysis a day, 15, 20 minutes, sometimes an hour. Rarely getting the credit for what I was doing at the time. Half the time I was in beefs over bullshit. Like, I had people taking credit for what I had done. Like, and I was still just digging and digging. And I just put my head down, and I really wasn't taking care of my mental health to the degree that I should, to be honest with you.
Right.
I wasn't taking days off. There was one point, like, where most people know I was homeless and I was still working, doing this. There was a point where I was working 2 or 3 jobs, still doing this. There was a point where I was able to support myself from doing this, but then I started doing this more because I do enjoy what I do. But I also feel like I felt like a heavy burden and a responsibility to the people that go to me, because a lot of the people who watch me, especially back then, like, they may watch some other people, but it's probably because I didn't post anything that day. They were going to me as the authority on a lot of issues because, like, there was nobody with more political experience, like direct on the ground political experience like I had. There was nobody else who had worked in these fields, who had the expertise, who had the knowledge from like firsthand experience that I had in independent media. And to be frank, at the time, there was nobody more entertaining either. Like, I enjoyed what I did, and I hopefully that showed through camera. But eventually, I just got tired. I was just so exhausted because I had stuff in my life going on, and then there was stuff in the media. Like, I just got tired of dealing with dumbass beef and people stabbing other people in the back and stabbing me in the back. And I was also getting exhausted from the way my team was even being treated by people that called them friends. And it was overwhelming after a while. So I just had to step away.
Right. And is that in part what led you to move abroad?
So I had been thinking about moving abroad. Originally, I was going to move to Mexico, by the way, but I've been thinking about moving abroad for about a year and some change. And the thing that had stopped me from moving was my grandmother.
Right.
Because like at any given moment, she could need me, and I wanted to be there for her. And then at one point we had a conversation. She was like, "Well, like, you need to go travel," because I was never able to travel the way I wanted to. And she always just joked like, I live vicariously through you. So, and to be frank, I was her favorite grandson. Just be honest with everybody. She had a lot of grandkids, but I was her favorite. Seriously, she would always tell me, like, go out and enjoy the world. And I was like, Grandma, like, don't worry. Once you feel better, I'll take you. Like, but once she passed away, and I kind of like looked around at the state of the country. I looked around at like, I was like, do I have enough time to get settled into a new country like before I start doing whatever I do again? And then like actually I was looking at, INN, I was looking at RBN, I was still looking, Combo Couch still doing their thing. I'm like, I think things will be okay until I get back. And and to be frank, I mean, okay is a relative term, but as far as the media is concerned, like y'all have been handling business, and like that made me feel more comfortable. Honestly, that's what made me feel comfortable taking time off. I'm like, shit. A lot of the stuff would have never gotten discussed if it wasn't myself discussing it or Pastor Fiorella.
Yeah.
Like, that's just the facts. But when I see like you coming up and Sab coming up and Nick and everybody, I'm like, wow, okay, I can actually fucking breathe.
Yeah.
That's how I felt. Because I felt like I said, I felt like this burden. Like it's, I guess it's a blessing at the same time. Like it feels good to know that so many people believed in me and supported me. But at the same time, it was a burden. People to this day blow up my DMs asking like, when are you going to start the show? Like, when are you going to do the show? I need to hear you. Like, and I get it, and I appreciate it. But I was tired. And so whenever I had the opportunity, so I visited Brazil for the first time in September for a friend's wedding, actually. That
Last year.
out being a fan of the show in 2016, and we just actually had gotten close over the years. And so me, Pasta, coincidentally, Pasta and Fee were actually here. Pasta and Fee and Johnny were here to cover the Brazilian election at the same time,
right?
But also to go to the wedding. And I was here for the wedding, and I completely forgot about the Brazilian elections because I had just tuned out at this point, and I was like just trying to enjoy my life. And I'm like, why y'all here again? And they're like, bro, the wedding or the elections. I'm like, now I bullshit you not. Like the day before, maybe shit, not even the day before, like maybe the day of, I'm like getting on the plane and Pasta's like, let me know when you get here. I'm like, bitch, I'm going to Brazil. Like, what are you talking about? And he's like, bro, we're here. So that was a great time. We actually really enjoyed ourselves. And I kind of like fell in love because, well, one, it was kind of interesting not having to fear for my life being like Black in the wrong place at the wrong time. I'm not saying that doesn't happen in, like at all. Yeah. But when you're in a country where like Brazil has more Africans than any other country in the world except for Nigeria.
Right. Yeah.
So it's a lot different here. Like when you watch TV, you'll see Black people and white people sitting together. You'll see like their most popular artists, like music artists, are usually like Black. Like it's and they're okay with that. They're perfectly fine with that. Right. Like, yeah, there's a like a class issue when it comes to color. There is a colorism issue. Are there some races? Yeah, on average, no, not really. And even the quote unquote racist is more of a class thing too, because they'll treat white Brazilians, if you're poor, they'll treat you a certain type of way as it like just like they would treat Black people. But like it's even hard to know who people voted for 9 times out of 10 here, which is interesting. I found that kind of curious because you would think that somebody voted for Lula or think that they voted for Bolsonaro. Well, no, actually, a lot of the time you wouldn't think they voted for Bolsonaro because everybody's just so nice. Like, right. Everybody's like looking out for each other. Everybody helps everybody out. They always say like Brazilians have to take care of each other. Like if you're Brazilian, you're Brazilian. And the only way they've managed to survive and to some degree thrive to this point is by taking care of each other. So yeah, like once you start getting into the religious breakdowns and things like that, maybe you can tell after you start seeing the pattern. But at first you're gonna be like, hold on, you voted for Bolsonaro? And they're like, yeah, man, Lula's a communist. I'm like, oh, okay, here we go. Damn, it took a while for us to get to this point, but I'm always surprised. And there's like Black people who vote for Bolsonaro. Like that you would be like, what? Right. But, so they're not as monolithic as you would think. But I like that, first of all. And also, I like being a Black person in Brazil is like the coolest shit ever. Like they literally think you are a superstar. It is like Black Americans specifically. Yeah. They can't believe that people don't like us. They're like, that's crazy. Right. Seriously. So I enjoy that.
No, you're speaking my language, like being born and raised abroad and living in Africa for a brief stint in time, like over a decade ago. It definitely hits different in terms of you being Black, but being somewhere else where not to say you're appreciated, because there is some of that racism, somewhat, but I think generally in the global South, I would argue it's definitely, as you said, more of a class issue versus more on race.
Yeah.
And I feel like definitely
Colorism is an issue more like when it comes to like a ceiling of income because of
right.
it is mostly network based. Like there's just you don't know enough white people, white Brazilians to get to that point. That is the main issue. And it's actually for them, they actually talk about it's the name that's more important than the race, even.
Mm,
So
right,
it just so happened to be obviously because of the Portuguese that came, the names, there's certain names that are associated with being white. So
right,
like if you're a black person, like so, but like we look at David, Glenn Greenwald's late husband, um, he managed to achieve amazing heights at an extremely young age.
right,
Like the dude was a federal level congressman, and he was gay and he was black, and he was like people always for some reason associate his greatness with Glenn, and Glenn is my guy. He's my dog. Glenn has achieved a lot, bro. David has achieved more than Glenn at a far younger age than Glenn has,
right,
and that was not because of Glenn Greenwald. Like,
right,
and people don't realize that because it seems so like far fetched. And although, but Brazil isn't even all that socially progressive. Actually, people think
yeah,
that they're very, it's weird. It's a weird, like kind of conservative, but super. It's like Cubans in Miami. It's like, hold up, all these people are conservative, but like all this ass is out here on the streets just shaking
right,
out, and yeah, it's weird, but it like you can achieve great heights in Brazil if you meet the right people, and it doesn't feel like you're going to like be put in a chokehold because the wrong like one person meets you and is immediately intimidated by you,
right.
because that happens a lot in the States.
Oh
Like
yeah, oh yeah.
it's a problem.
So, so since you mentioned, David, in terms of government, and you've been able to kind of report on this or kind of see this for a while now that you live there. Tell us how does government play a role in Brazil, and how does that compare to the fuck shit that we have to deal with here?
Okay, so the federal government is very paternalistic, like much more I would say like in good ways and bad ways. It's very paternalistic. Like for example, they have something called pick pay, which is actually probably a good thing. It allows people to make instant payments through anywhere to anyone through their phone. And it's attached to a CPF, which is what we would probably call a social security number.
Mm-hmm.
But it makes it much easier to do payments like to Uber. They
Mm-hmm.
give you discounts for using PicPay. It's a good way to boost your credit. But even if you don't have credit, you're still allowed to use it. It allows you to make payments without tax. So it gives people who don't have a lot of money other options,
Right.
which is great because also they also kind of mandated so that every major bank has to have um, an app. Like you have to be able to do 100, damn near 100% of your accounting on your phone,
Mm-hmm.
because it's extreme. Most people don't have cars here. So like it's extremely difficult. It could become a whole hour and a half to 2 hour move just to go to the bank. When you have one or two kids, where you have to take an hour to go get them from daycare, and then go from work and et cetera, like it becomes extremely inconvenient. So that was to help people keep up with their payments, because it was so difficult for people to be on time when you have to make that huge commute like that. So in that way, it was good. But then you also have like the bad part, which is the economy is still very shaky and shifty. Um, that's because of how much control the U.S. or excuse me, how
Yeah.
much control the U.S. government has over the federal government,
Right.
right? And so you can, once your name is kind of like soiled in that regard, it carries over into everything. It's the U.S. is actually starting to become a lot like this, where now bad credit can affect whether or not you can get car insurance, which shouldn't be a thing when it's legally required for you to get car insurance, but it is affecting that.
Right.
But it absolutely affects it here as well. Now, what I will say though is that from my experience so far, credit doesn't affect, for the most part, your ability to get a home here, or to rent. You just
Really?
have to show that you can make the payments,
Okay.
which is good.
Right.
And I think that's a federal thing too. So, but from what I've seen so far, the reason that people survive is because they help each other. Like that's like because the U.S. government has such an influence over the economy here. It's always up and down and up and down. China is helping to stabilize that with their increased involvement with trade, with imports and exports and things like that. They make a lot of the phones and a lot of the technology here to make it more accessible and more affordable. You can make payments on damn near everything. Everyone is qualified to get a credit card in the beginning. Everybody's guaranteed a credit card, and everybody's guaranteed like the lowest interest possible at a certain age without your race becoming a factor, which I know people are like, well, that's the case. No, that's not the case in the US, in case you didn't know. Like
No.
if you're black, your interest rate is immediately higher than everybody else's.
Right.
Like people don't know that, but that's reality.
Yeah.
But that's not the case in the States because like also it becomes much harder to discriminate based off of your race from applications because when you think about it, like in the States, they will literally look at your name and your zip code and be like, oh, that sounds like a black name. He's living in a black neighborhood.
Mm-hmm.
However, bro, like I don't know what the fuck I still do not know what a black or a white name is in Brazil.
Right.
And I live in a suburb, but like maybe 3 blocks down is like a favela, like or like a kind of like a hood area.
Mm-hmm.
So and it's the same zip code, so you wouldn't know.
Right.
It would be very difficult to be able to discriminate, and so that's good too. So what I would like to see is perhaps, which I guess we are seeing a little bit more of. I would like to see the government exercises paternalism in a way that takes command of the economy more, and I would love to see them stand up to the WTO and NAFTA and those parameters a little bit more to benefit the people. And I get it's dangerous, but like somebody has to do this shit because Brazil would. The reason that Brazil, if you like live here long enough, you begin to quickly realize like, oh shit, I can see why the U.S. exerts so much effort into stifling Brazil's economy because, bro, the weather, like for example, in Rio, I guess like the coldest it's been here is 65, and it's winter time or about to be winter time.
Mm-hmm.
And generally it gets to about 85. The weather's perfect, like damn near all the time. They don't have natural disasters, Colin,
right,
at all. They don't have tornadoes. They don't have hurricanes. They don't have tsunamis. They don't even have fucking mudslides. Okay.
Right.
Like that fire that happened, that wasn't a natural fire. That was some shit that Bolsonaro did to clear some of the Amazons, obviously, to sell it to some corporation. But that wasn't a natural fire. That doesn't happen here because the air is too moist in that area. It's not like fucking California. So like I mean, the women, I mean, good God, like literally in Rio specifically, they have women that are so out of this world that they have their own designation. They call carioca. Like, imagine Brazilian soccer team, or excuse me, Brazilian volleyball team. Whatever you're thinking about, that's them. That is basically all of Rio.
Right.
They have a lot of diversity. They have a lot of talent. Financially, because of just the circumstances of Brazil, you have a lot of brilliant financial minds as well. If they were allowed to thrive, they would shit on the U.S. Colin, like,
yeah,
that's what it comes down to. It would be a bit, and they have all these countries to work around because that have oil.
Right. Right.
So
yeah. So what's your take on Lula now that especially since you're living there? How do you feel he's playing? I mean, he's saying some nice things, like just kind of what we're observing and what we kind of reported on here. But like you being on the ground, how do you feel his presidency is influencing, if at all, the state of affairs?
So it's making his presidency so far has made the Haiti stronger. Like his presidency combined with the U.S. being completely abysmal right now in the international stage has made the Brazilian real stronger. I would give him about a 6.7 out of 10 right now because he was supposed to start moving to legalize marijuana. He has not done so yet. And that would be huge.
Yeah.
Because right now, like a lot of the weed that is sold, it's made in the favelas and it's literally mixed with crack sometimes because like they ain't got a lot of room up there, guys. Like everything is kind of in the same room and it's a problem. So it becomes more dangerous, and people literally have to go to the favelas in order to buy weed. Now, the favelas, if you're minding your own fucking business, the favelas are actually not as dangerous as people think they are. Everybody's seen the city of God, and they think, holy shit, this is like that is that literally the city of God is an anomaly even within Rio favelas. Like it is its own thing entirely. So like just to clarify that, but it's still dangerous because like you could just end up like some random person who isn't from that favela can go to the favela and take advantage of those circumstances, like human traffickers and things like that. So, but he also kind of like he's kind of playing this, like playing a role a little bit like, oh, I'm still ingratiate myself with the US.
Yeah.
Like they didn't get him arrested, but also I'm not pretend, like still be bold about me being willing to work with Russia and China, et cetera, et cetera. Like he has to, I hate to say pick a side, but like, bro, like you got to pick a side, dog. Like
Yeah.
right now, as you can see on the world stage, the only ones who have room to play the middle is literally China, because we're symbiotically attached to them, like the US is when it comes to their economy. So like they can't, like people think that China is like oh man, they're gonna overtake the US. If they overtake the US and the US benefits from it at the end of the day, like it's not really gonna, they're never going to be able to completely separate from the US. It would kill their economy, just like it would kill the US economy if they separated from China.
Right.
So but like Russia is they're making a firm stance. Syria, Saudi Arabia even is making a very firm stance. Iran obviously is making a firm stance. You have many countries in Africa that are making firm stances. You have to be like, you have to make a stand for your country. You can still be diplomatic, right? But like at the same time, you need to give off a signal to the rest of the world and to your country, like we're going to do what the fuck is best for our country.
Right.
Period. Point blank.
Right.
And like consequences to self be damned, because that's really what it comes down to, in my opinion. Is like there are a lot, like the legislature, right? So here's my thing about Lula, though. Right? So Lula generally he's blackish for the most part, right? He comes from a humble background, but my problem with Lula is that everybody around him looks like Bolsonaro. That's my issue. They don't look like David Miranda. They look like Bolsonaro. They look like Lula. They look like Bolsonaro.
Right.
So when you keep those type of people around you, that worries me, because you and I know, like, those are the ones who are helping influence the decisions. Those are the ones who are in his ears.
So he's literally Bernie. Really?
Yeah. Yeah, he's
no,
a little bit.
but it's like, you can make that same case for Bernie too. It's just like he says a lot of the right things, but he still calls Biden my good friend and all that bullshit. And it's like,
Exactly.
what kind of friend is that that especially what he has done to Black people in particular? Like, why would you have a friend like that? So it
he
makes
still keeps a lot, like people call Lula a communist, which is like fucking crazy, because like Lula's a capitalist. Like, he's a liberal.
Right.
Like, he's a liberal. He is as liberal as it comes. Like maybe not in all the bad ways, but he's still liberal. Like he's not a socialist by any means. And also Bolsonaro kind of passed some socialist policies too. So like there's that. Like
no,
like,
it was
nobody,
just,
but he like hide, like it's weird how like they hide the conservative and socialist parts of their administrations. But at the end of the day, I would like to see more people look like that look like Lula around him, because Brazil, once again, Brazil is mostly African. Like, so why is it that everybody who lives in Brasilia looks like Bolsonaro?
Right.
It makes no sense.
Probably make that money too, like Bolsonaro does too.
Yeah. There's a lot of scholarships for people to get, like, to go to college. That's something I believe that the government can help with. Being able to qualify for a student loan largely depends on your credit. And if you had credit at a very young, like if you got bad credit at a young age, which a lot of times isn't even the fault of the individual, because the person can fire whenever they can fire you whenever they want, or terminate contract. It doesn't necessarily be firing, but like every job can effectively be a temp job, no matter how good you are at it, because tourist season is tourist season. When it's not, you just better hope you can make it. You gotta hope you can survive it. So it's very difficult to keep great credit in Brazil for anybody. I don't care how successful you were or you are right now. It's kind of like that in the States. It's crazy the parallels I've actually been seeing. The States are becoming a lot like Brazil.
Oh.
The income inequality is crazy. The lack of discrimination in income inequality is even crazier. Like you're starting to see white people that were, middle class, they're starting to come over here to the hoods with us. Like, damn, bro, I'm gonna have to move down the street. It's like, yeah, man, but thank you for raising our housing value. If we have more of y'all white people in here, we're gonna be able to sell these now. Like, it's problematic. It's problematic, but Brazil, in my opinion, is going in the opposite direction. They're beginning to see themselves have more opportunity to live themselves out. It's still a problem, but they're beginning but Lula's doing a lot for them. And I would say even Bolsonaro loosening up visas so that more Westerners can come. Like, so if you're from the US, you actually don't need a visa to come to Brazil.
Right.
You don't need a visa to live here, which is like kind of a big deal because the Brazilian real is largely dependent on the US dollar.
Right.
So like that's a big deal. That's actually one of the few good things that Bolsonaro did is kind of removing those barriers. But like I almost wonder if it was the US who influenced those barriers to begin with, because they knew like if you're an American, you figure this shit out. Like why would you even say? But there's a lot of Americans and a lot of Britons that are moving here.
Yeah. Well, that's just generally the global South, just in general. It's just like they see, especially if you're able to kind of keep your salary, and now, especially you being able to work remotely, you can basically go anywhere around the world you want. Why not? And then, but I made the argument, and that's kind of what I wanted to kind of lead in terms of this question, because I've seen this align East Africa in terms of everybody but Black people going in and living and kind of investing in that country.
Yeah.
And I always feel a certain way that it's not us who are kind of, especially going in the global South, especially where there is a Black presence, that I'm like, we always kind of tailor things here in terms of like, you go to college, you get your degree, you get a job, you stay here. And we never talk about the idea, especially among Black people, is like, we need to try and figure out what options we have, because if the revolution comes or shit hits the fan, like we have to be willing to be like duck ship and find other places, that will be able to take us in.
I think there's a reason that I think there's a reason though for Black people not shifting as much to these other countries. At least there was one, which is we didn't have the financial freedom to do so.
Right.
Like, to keep it real, like we weren't allowed to. We can't decide one day I'm going to take out a second mortgage on my home, that I've passed down 3 generations or whatever, to build a business in East Africa. Can't do it, like for the most part. Those who can, they usually have a very solid family foundation, and they're not about to leave that family foundation. It's taken the ones who have a lot that aren't celebrities or public figures. It took the whole family usually building that up together, and it is staying, stable and alive and thriving, because a lot of the time that support system is in place. With white people, it isn't necessarily the case. Like if Johnny Smith leaves to go build up a business in East Africa, his family's all right. Like most of the time he can go do that because his family was already all right. Whether he succeeded in college was of zero consequence to his family. Whereas whether or not I succeeded or my brother succeeded, it's a problem. If I failed, when I told my mom I wasn't going to law school, it was a fucking problem. You have no idea how, like, it was kind of a grudge that my mom held against me for like 2 or 3 years.
Yes.
Like, and people laugh about that shit. I'm like, no. Because on top of that, like, I was going to get paid to go to law school on top of all of it.
Right.
Like, a lot of money just to be in law school. I was supposed to go to Harvard. Then after you go to Harvard Law, you do what the hell you want to. Like, after that, my mom knew in her head that eventually she would never have to worry about anything again, as far as, because my mom worked hard her entire life. And she put up with a lot of shit from me and my brother, to be honest. So like, but now that life is kind of worked out, she's a little bit less resentful about that decision. However, like that would, I'm not at that time without a surefire way to support my family here or in the States. I would have never even considered moving, no matter how much of a benefit that it could have potentially been for me. Like, I have no problem learning another language if I need to survive. I have no problem adapting to different cultures if I need to. But like, if my mom comes to Brazil, which by the way, she's actually considered moving here now,
Mhm.
but that's because she knows I can support her. And if she comes, like, can she learn a language? If she absolutely had to, I'm sure she would figure it out. But like, she's like, it's fine. Like, you know enough, and you can support me financially, and I'll go there. It's not going to be a problem. But we didn't have that type of mindset 10 years ago. Most Black people didn't.
No,
Excuse me.
no,
It's different now, though. Now
yeah,
it's like, fucking go where you can survive, and hopefully you can build up a foundation that other people can take advantage of and invest in. And that's why I've seen, like I said, I've seen a lot. I cannot believe how many Black people I've seen in Brazil. Y'all don't even know, bro. Black people didn't even know passports were a fucking thing until 5 years ago, it feels like. Well, that's what it feels like. And the ones who were in the military back in the day, you didn't even need a passport, right? You just usually use your CAP card. Your
right.
military ID, that was your passport for so many countries. So like, the ones who had money to travel were either super rich or they were in the military. You just fly for free, basically.
Right.
It was only very recently that we started kind of like expanding outside of the Caribbean, right? Because a lot of Black people, when they do travel, where are they going? Like Jamaica,
Jamaica,
Dominican
like,
Republic,
right.
those type of countries. You know where they're
um,
going. You already know.
no, I already know because that's what I've seen. Like I was very fortunate to grow up in Europe. So, and the idea there was like like to live in Europe and not go to another country is you don't.
It's
Like
not even out. Like, is
it's
it even
like
fucking
it's not an
possible?
option. Like, especially for me being in the UK. Like, especially now it's a lot easier now than when I was growing up to go to the mainland, but that was never, but even with me growing up with Caribbean parents, like they always emphasize with me, my mom in particular, like you grow up, you get out of the country, you travel, you see the world, you
It's
live,
important to do it.
and like and I think for me in a lot of ways I'm very appreciative of my mom saying that to me from young and kind of instilling that in me from young, because I think especially now in a way I think of politics now, I have the context of being able to kind of living in Europe and living in Africa
Mm.
and living here and having Caribbean parents. I'm able to kind of look at things from a multiverse term of thought in terms of how people think, or at least it's easier for me to do that
Yeah,
instead of kind of pigeonholing myself into one factor of thinking just because you're American. So,
absolutely. Yeah. And
um,
you know what's crazy? So like, I remember my second time maybe going out to the club. Um, I met these two Black guys. Actually, they found me. They looked at me. No, actually, I found them. They looked at me at first, and then I looked at them like, it's okay, bro. I speak English. They're like, oh, bro, you speak English. And like, so then I was the first American that they had met, and I was like the first Black person they had ever met. And this guy had been to Brazil about 3 or 4 times at this point, which is like, wow. But he was a younger guy; he's about my age. I was like, what made you come back? And he was like, man, look. He said, I've never felt like this. He said, it's crazy that like Black people have no idea what it feels like to not be hated when you walk into a room.
yeah,
And
yeah.
it's an indescribable feeling. I wish I
Mhm.
could explain it to people. Like,
No, I know. Like
my biggest
that's
problem is that like I'm not fluent in Portuguese. Like, I speak Portuguese, but I'm not fluent. Like, to the point where I can. First of all, Rio people, Carioca is a whole different fucking dialect. That shit is crazy. It's like what they speak is like a gidia, which is basically a word for slang, and almost all of them speak like that. Like, it's like casual. They don't speak like people in Sao Paulo or the Amazon. Like, they speak a whole different thing. But my biggest problem is like when I walk into a room, everyone wants to talk to me about
yeah,
everything. That's
yeah,
my biggest problem, which is like,
right.
cool, nerve wracking as shit because I can't really communicate completely with all of them, unless it's about something very specific. But yeah, like, that's my biggest problem is that everybody wants to be friends with me.
Do you feel though, because I definitely feel this way going to East Africa because I'm basically the only Black person that at least among the circle of people that they know that is able to speak to them from a perspective that is Black and not necessarily someone who is white kind of being a proxy, which is often wrong. But like,
Yeah.
I often feel like this pressure of being like the representative in terms of
No, for
like,
sure. Like, bro,
like,
black people in Rio, like, once they find out, because a lot of people already they think I'm Brazilian. So there's that. Like, people have literally called me like their cousin while I walk on the beach, which is a whole different thing. But then they find out, like, oh no, you're a Black American. Then it
mhm,
immediately becomes, tell me everything there
everything.
is to know
Yeah.
about being a Black American. And I'm like,
Yes.
I don't.
Yeah.
What do you want me to tell you? Like, I don't know. And then what these group of kids, man, that I'm, they started rapping songs to me and shit. Like, this showed me how much they knew about hip hop, and I'm like, this is crazy. Like, these
Yeah.
people like really care about, but it's crazy to me because like viscerally, even they know how much influence we have over the world.
Mm-hmm.
That's what's wild.
Yeah.
Like they don't, I don't have people. Yeah, they might know a lot of the white songs, like the pop songs, because like that's that's those are the songs that get played over the radio here. But like with the limited amount of resources they've had, the one thing that they know for certain is like they're gonna know their Nelly songs.
Yeah.
They're gonna know P. Diddy and Biggie Smalls and Tupac.
Yeah.
They're gonna know all the words, not knowing a damn thing that they're not gonna understand shit. But like these are people who they won't speak a lick of English, but they actually will understand some. And when I ask them, like, how do you understand it? They're like, oh, all I listen to is American music for the most part. And I'm like, you don't understand it. Yeah, man, but like rap, like hip hop, but they actually call it hippie hoppy. I'm like, well, that sounds like way less intimidating than it was supposed to sound, but that's what they call it. And they're like, yo, I love it. And they try to emulate it. And it's not, they can't emulate it actually. They try very, very, very hard to emulate Black American culture. But what fascinates them about us is like when they actually meet a Black American like myself, they're like, yo, why do you walk like that? Or like, why do you talk like that? Or why do you carry yourself like that? Like, man, you just look so like a dude literally walked up to me one day, like, yo, you just look really confident. And I'm just standing there by myself drinking a caipirinha. Like, and he's like, you just look really confident, bro. I just want to tell you that. It's like, oh, thanks, bro. Like, I appreciate it. Yeah. But it's when you actually feel like, oh shit, like I'm more than a target, and I'm
Yeah.
more than a victim, and I'm more than something that somebody can use to make themselves money. Like I actually have value because of my experiences that someone else can recognize without me even having to explain why they should recognize it. It does put you in a completely and totally different mental state
Yeah.
overall.
So actually that kind of leads into, and I don't want to keep you long, but so I do want to ask you now, um, what are you up to in terms of, like, your future in terms of independent media, if that's something that you're still planning to do?
Yeah.
And how do you feel that relates to just what you shared in terms of, you kind of mentioned something in a big reason why I wanted to go into this space is because, especially in the global South, like I don't have access. I can't go to Africa or Caribbean like every year like I want to, but being able to have the power to kind of put some of my thinking and my thought process on YouTube, which hopefully is accessible pretty much
Right.
worldwide,
Hopefully.
but you just kind of said it in terms of like there's an appetite of Black thought, and like around the world.
Yeah, there is.
And
For
and
sure.
I think like, but it has to be in the right thing. It's great that it's like usually in entertainment or whatever, which is okay, but never in terms of like, looking at,
It's very rarely in terms of like just politics, right? Like
yeah,
pure
exact,
politics. Like not, and I'm not talking about like the general like clickbaity shit. Like, yeah. And if it is in politics, it's only what about something about Black people that they want to usually hear from us. But like, obviously for me, I've kind of always been an anomaly because I like will get into the minutia of politics, and people are always kind of taken aback by how much I might know about a certain topic. And I'm like, I don't understand why. I was genuinely naive at the beginning. I didn't realize how rare it was for like a young person to be that, like to nerd out like that on certain, like at a certain level
Yeah.
when it comes to politics.
Yeah.
Now I know better,
Yeah,
but
I think no, but it is rare. And I think for me watching you, back not so long ago, it was very rare to have somebody who is not tied to the establishment speaking the way that you were speaking, not feeling like, oh, this guy has a hidden agenda in terms of trying to sheepdog me into something that may not benefit me, or if it did, like, that would kind of cut the rest of my community at the knees, if that makes any sense.
exactly. And I always wanted somebody like that to watch. I never really had it to that degree, and I guess it's maybe why I did what I did. But because of that reason, like, no, I'm not quitting independent media. I'm actually about to start I'm recording and posting my first podcast episode on Thursday or Thursday evening. I haven't, depends on how long it's going to take for us to get the sound and everything together. But my first long form podcast will be posted on HotSpot um, on Thursday, and it will be
Okay.
talking about politics, obviously, some pop culture and things like that. But what the goal is to tie everything back together to let people know, like, yo, like everything is politics. And we're going to try to talk more about the human element of a lot of that stuff. What makes us tick, why people think the way they do, how we can address it, how we can become more unified. And I really want to get back to having fun, because there was a certain point where I stopped having fun, like admittedly,
Yeah.
because I'm just like, what the fuck am I even talking about this shit for? These dumb motherfuckers are gonna not listen, and I'm gonna have to deal with this X, Y, and Z. Like, it's serious. I literally just got. I'm like, because I always give credit to like people like Jesse Ventura and people who have been doing this for decades now, or 15 years. I've gone through 2 whole election cycles. I'm like, bro, why the fuck do I find myself having to repeat these very simple facts that everybody
Right.
should know? But you've realized that the world is fucking huge, bro. And there's a lot of people who need to hear the shit that you said 10 times for the first time. Like,
Right.
that's just the reality of it.
Or in many cases, never heard before.
Yeah,
Especially if you
exactly.
think
Exactly.
internationally, it's like, the benefit, the thing that I kind of realized, especially within the last 15 years is, and I'm sure you're realizing this now, especially in terms of being abroad yourself, the shit that we go through in like the US is the same shit that people are going through in Brazil. It's the same shit that people are going through in the Caribbean. It's the same shit that Black people are going through in Europe. Same shit that going on in Africa as
Yeah.
well. It's all connected. And we
TikTok is
need,
showing a lot. Like, TikTok is definitely like kind of like opening my, as silly as that sounds. Like, I would watch TikToks from like African, like, or Caribbean diaspora in the UK, and I'm like, holy shit, bro! I didn't even, like, because I'm technically part of the Caribbean diaspora in the US, and I'm like, damn,
right.
these are all, it's very interesting to me, because like they talk about like the struggle with identity, and then there's
Yeah.
like the whole weird
Yeah.
African versus Caribbean beef,
Yeah.
and then there's like have like now Caribbean diaspora in the UK is now having all their lingo and dialect, and even their accents copied by white
Yeah.
British people.
Right. Right.
And I'm like,
And
damn, bro,
right.
feels you. I feels you.
Right. So yeah, so it's great to hear. It's great to hear from you that, like, because I feel like I say this and people are like, nah, man, like that ain't, like, but to hear that from you, and you could say this now because you're experiencing this now, it kind of validates what I've been saying to people. It's like, that's why I think, just especially in terms of within the diaspora, we need to get our shit together, because we're all essentially are going through the same shit. It's
Yeah.
different variations of the shit, but these are the discussions that I think among us that we need to have, because there's a lot of connections that could be made, and realizing like, yeah, we may be living different regions of the world, but
Yeah.
the issue at the end of the day is basically white supremacy, and like all of us have that link there. And so like,
Yeah.
we need to, and I get frustrated, in terms of, like, especially among us, like, I just feel we're just so weak because we just kind of gone so complacent in terms of like the things that even my father, who is in his 80s now, who is fighting for these things, is now basically looking at me and being like, what the fuck are we doing? I've worked so hard and we're going backwards,
Yeah, it feels
and
like it.
yeah, and it's like, and I feel that, like, but I think just kind of a lot of the messaging, and I think especially for us being in this space, definitely feel that weight in terms of you have to say the right thing, and like you can't piss the wrong people off, or like you have to kind of hold everything kind of close to your chest. Otherwise, it's very easy to misconstrue or like point fingers, especially if you're Black, especially being in this space that, whereas I think if you're white, like you can get a
You
little
get
more
first, second,
leeway.
third, fourth, fifth chances to fuck up, be wrong. Yeah,
Right.
it's different. But you know what, man? I will say, like, one thing I've learned is that, like, so when I really started like hitting my stride, maybe 2019, late 2018, when I started hitting my stride, I just stopped giving a fuck. Like, I just started like laughing, like, because I knew I was gonna be like. So, for example, whenever I was working with Tulsi, like, everybody was upset and even ridiculing me for being close to the last. There was three presidential candidates that made it to the end. It was Tulsi Gabbard, Bernie Sanders, and Joe fucking Biden.
Right.
And they were like, "Look at you, you Tulsi like sycophant." Like, no. First of all, if you're gonna address me, you can call me surrogate. You can call me, you can call me whatever you want. Call me advisory, but you're gonna call me by my fucking correct title. The reason you're
Right.
upset is because you're like the audacity of some kid who did not come from a political background, who did not come
Right.
from CNN, TYT, whatever. That did not get. I didn't get handed shit. Like, and once again, the only person, like, I got my job, or I became part of Tulsi's campaign after I criticized her. That's the
Mm-hmm.
funny part. That's what people were upset about. Like, the audacity for you to not have the same opportunities as these people, or the audacity for you to not, to like, you got this close to a campaign and you're not white. You don't belong
Right.
to this network. You didn't say all these things, and you didn't
Right.
kiss this ass, and you
Right.
didn't do this. So why do you get this privilege?
Right.
Motherfucker, because I work for it. Like,
Right.
and that's what really people were upset about.
Yeah.
But, and I'll say, like, me and Bree don't have any problems, but like, nobody said that Bree was a sycophant when she was literally running behind Bernie and cleaning up his messes the whole campaign. They called her a surrogate, and, press secretary, whatever. And that's because that's her job. That's
Mm-hmm.
because they like that white man, right? It was different because she was, when you're a good little boy or a good little girl for that white man that they like, they will come up with excuses as to why what you're doing is okay. But I was working with a woman of color, and I'm a Black man.
Right.
Therefore, it must be because she's attractive, or it must be because I'm a sycophant, or
Mm-hmm.
it must be because, not because I'm literally just, I was like, out of everybody independent media, there was only one person that deserved a job helping on a political campaign of that magnitude at an intricate level, and that was me. Unless you want to talk about specifically election integrity stuff, then that was Possum Fiorella.
Right.
Like, everybody else, you got the job because they wanted to seem edgy, and they wanted to ingratiate themselves with independent media because they began to realize that they needed independent media. But as far as the actual, like, understanding of policy and how to apply it, like, there was nobody else but me that deserved it. And
Right.
I took a lot of pride in that. But that was not appreciated. In fact, I won't say it wasn't. They did appreciate that fact, which is why they had to work so hard to pretend like it wasn't a thing. They're like, nah, it has to be everything else. Niko had to be close to this campaign, or friends with this person, or like, they just feel bad for him. They just they, like, people that I used to be friends with that had attacked me, because people don't talk about the fact that every single person that came out and attacked me for working with Tulsi were upset because they didn't get interviews with Tulsi,
Mm-hmm.
because they were trying to. They were trying their hardest to be a part of Tulsi's campaign in some way, form, or fashion, because Tulsi's name was, I mean, it was getting, I mean, most Google candidate, right? So like there was money at a certain point getting that Tulsi interview and we got the first one, obviously. And we were the ones taking pictures with her. And she was the one tagging us on Twitter. And we like, oh man, I can't believe like, oh, what? So I'm not close with Bernie's campaign. I'm kissing his ass. And Niko House is close with Tulsi's campaign and still friends with Nina in most of Bernie's camp too. Well, yeah.
Right.
Why wouldn't I be?
Right.
They're like, nah, it can't be because you are great at what you do. It must be because X, Y, Z. And like, if you're not going to play the game, you're not going to kiss ass, and I'm just going to attack you until like it pays off.
Right. And it's
So you
funny
just got to
now,
stop giving a
like,
fuck.
yeah,
Like
it's
when you're
just
black,
funny.
there's some battles you're not going to win at first or immediately, but those people like you or like the people that watch my show, like they're still paying attention. They may not be as loud or obnoxious as the idiots who are, boisterous about their fucking stupidity. Like, but they're watching and they're peeping behind closed doors, or they're peeping behind like what's going on. And that's who I do it for, because that audience is sustainable. That audience wants to make change. That audience will go out and talk to their friends and family because they're not ashamed of the information that I'm telling them. They're not gonna wait till they get in front of the right people to start talking about the stuff that we talk about in our shows. They're gonna say that shit in front of conservative, Democrat, Christian, Muslim, whoever, because what we're talking about is right, and right is right no matter what audience you're in front of.
Right. So, final question, and I'll let you go. But what do you see? What do you predict? As I said, you're Negro goddess. Like, what do you see the future of independent media in your view looking like?
Man, that's a loaded question. Man, what do you mean though? Like, in what context? Because like,
I'm like, let me rephrase it this way. For people who are looking to do what we're doing now, what do you think they need to do so that it can be as authentic as possible, as not
I think they need to watch our shows, right?
See,
honestly, I genuinely believe.
But that in of itself is a problem because you know this well, but our network is heavily suppressed.
Yeah.
And so really it's just like,
so we need to, so the future of independent media is this, right? We're at this stage where, like, let's be real, right? Joe Biden, Marianne Williamson, even to some degree RFK, they've kind of made it pretty easy to just talk shit and tell people the truth. And like, we can unify behind that. Like, as crazy as that sounds, like there are a lot of people who are tired of bullshit. They're tired of half steps. They're tired of all of that. And like, there are going to be sycophants. There are going to be your crystal balls. Like before, the way to get super popular was to do what? Was to find a candidate, you latch onto them, and then you ride that wave until the fucking tires fall off. It's not the case anymore. When you have more people being willing and honest to tell the truth as it is, rather than what people want it to be, that increases the likelihood of people to support that truth earlier rather than later, which is what we've traditionally seen in the past. And then everybody, in my opinion, has very unique perspectives to offer to every truth that is told, right? I might know things about RFK Jr. or Marianne Williamson, and we might come to the same conclusion, but I have different details and different perspective to offer. I think that right now, the truth is outing itself as being victorious. Like, finally, it's slow moving, it's slow rolling, but like, I never thought I'd see the day, like, to be frank, where everybody in independent media, except for the white people, cough, cough, thought like, yo, you know what? Fuck this. We're tired of putting up with Bree's shit. She's not going to sit here and bash people, like, or half-ass bash people and pretend like she doesn't know what she's doing. Block people for criticizing. Like, people got tired of it. And I was waiting for a bunch of people to then attack said people, Collin be one of them. One of the people be on the show right now. But no, but I was expecting people to attack like anyone who criticized Bree. That's no longer the case. People were like, nah, Bree, you fucking wrong. Get over it. Like, we're tired. Like, people have been patient there, but like, we're running out of time.
Yeah.
The truth is running out of time. Like, we don't have time for half measures anymore. Like, it's crazy, as fucked up as it sounds. Like, I have a mental note of everybody who was at Crystal Ball's wedding, because if Crystal Ball, so that you could be at her wedding, effectively what she says is you're willing to play the game.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
and she has a lot of evidence of that. It
Mm-hmm.
wasn't Kyle's list. I know it wasn't Kyle's list. It was Crystal's list. Right? Crystal's the one who runs the show. And it says a lot. Like, if she would have invited me, I probably wouldn't have went. Right? If I would have figured out who was going. Like, I'm not saying that
Well,
people should,
you have standards and
I
you have
have standards, yeah.
principles and you have principles.
Exactly.
And I think really, and I think that's kind of what we need to kind of develop in this space is what are those principles? Because I think in terms of what we're doing
Because Chris is
within
only
our,
going to be friends with you as well. If what, Colin? Chris is only going to be friends with you if your quote unquote goals align. It's not like some
right,
of my friends that I have disagreements with, and like we're friends because of shit that has nothing to do with politics. Like, I have a lot of friends like that, but that's not Crystal Ball.
right.
You
But
feel me? Like, there's a
no, I
difference,
feel you. But
because
when
there
I'm
are
in
people
this,
that you can agree with in principle on
mhm,
camera, on Twitter, but for some reason they completely distance themselves from you. It's like, well, if we agree on everything, well, because they know that your goals are different. Your goals are pure. You have honest intentions, and therefore we cannot be friends, because eventually my true intentions are going to show, and you're going to expose them. That's what it comes down to.
um, but yeah, I just think for me, it's the idea of like they're gonna do what they're gonna do, and at the same time, it's like I know what and I think for me, I have the advantage of I don't need to do this. Like
Exactly.
they can cut INN tomorrow, and I'm like, okay, I still have my job. I still have my full-time job teaching. I still have my advocacy in DC. So
And I'm just going to
nothing
create
really,
another email address and
right,
fucking start over. Like,
right. And like, yeah, so it doesn't affect me either way, in terms of like I'll be all right. And if anything, I still have my own channel that I still need to kind of work on, but I could still do that if INN is ever shut down.
yeah.
But I think for me, it's the question of kind of what you said earlier in terms of like there needs to be more of us that are being able to somehow kind of have that truth kind of spill, especially like in the global south where they don't have access to people like us who,
Yes.
like who are able to say this to them. And as I said, it's like the stuff that we're talking about is something that we collectively should be talking about all over. So really my
Mhm.
question to you is, and I don't expect you to have an answer for that, but I think based on you living there, and I think you're seeing the effect that you already have with the people that you're now connecting with, like how would you, or what do you think you could do to kind of convince
Oh man,
us
it's
to
funny
kind
that you
of
brought
do
that up. So I actually
like
wanted to,
that?
like, I actually have been talking to people, because a lot of people have been asking me, like, yo, how do you do this stuff? Like, how did you get started? I'm like, bro, like, y'all have phones, like, y'all have headphones, like, that's how I started. Like, and they're like, what? That's crazy. You're so popular now, though. And I'm like, nah, bro, I'm dead ass. And I got showing videos of me in my car, and they're like, wow, that's insane. Like, how did you even know what to talk about? I'm like, bro, like, you'll know whenever you get that burning fucking sensation in your gut. Like, I gotta talk about the shit right the fuck now. Like, you'll know. And then from there, you just don't stop. And I've been because there are a lot of people who don't know about the U.S.'s influence on Brazil. And most of the people in Brazil don't know about it.
Mm,
People are finding out about it as I'm telling them. Some people know about it because like Glenn Greenwald tells them, but Glenn obviously reaches like a different demographic and
audience, yeah.
audience in Brazil. Those are people who kind of already have access, who already know what to look for. And I just like in America, I guess, like I want to reach out to the people who don't even know that it's important to get involved yet. Like people who are like, why do I feel like nothing is changing? Then once that spark kind of hits them, like they just have this incessant need to inform other people, because that's like ultimately how we get change. Like change doesn't come from the government like altruistically making decisions for the benefit of its people. The government gets bullied into doing what the fuck we wanted to do if they ever do. Like that's just the reality of it. They get bullied. And that bullying comes from people being fed up. And people can only be fed up if they all know what to be fed up about. Right now, everybody's kind of fed up about different things, and they're kind of singularly focused on what's going on in their lives, trying to survive, just like in the States. But now we're kind of reaching this impasse, even in the States, where people are like, hold up, you know what? I got like, cause we now got like 2 election cycles of full social media, and people are all over kind of looking around like, something about this bullshit. I may not have the exact answer to what's going on, but I'm starting to realize at least that these people are all full of shit. Like, and now that we're getting to that point, in the States, now we kind of need people to get to that point in other countries so that they can start telling other people, stop fucking listening to those people in the States, like, or we're going to punish you for it.
Right.
So then those leaders in those countries be like, hey man, look, normally I would do what you tell me to do, but there are too many people now. People have too much access to information. You could trick this group and this particular group and this particular group to all be upset for different reasons and then take advantage of that and overthrow a government. It's easy to overthrow a government when everybody's separated. But the reason like Lula won again, despite all the smears against him, was like because Brazil has more access. They know that his arrest was for the most part bullshit. And they know what he did do. And that couldn't be affected by the US. And that's what we need really across the global South and around the world. I would love to see that start happening in Africa as well. Like that's where, because Africa is, that's a whole different show, but there's such a huge player. And if you really want to know what's going on in the world, like world politics and with the economy, like just look no further than what's happening in Africa. Every country is trying to control those nations. And it's because it's easy to control nations that don't have the access that we have to things.
Right. Niko, it just proves to me that I think we definitely need to talk more about this.
Sure.
but yeah, brother, I just want to thank you for for this. This has been actually, this has been really good for my soul to hear from you. And as far as the validation that that you're saying this to, in terms of a lot of what I've said on my channel, in terms of our responsibility, like worldwide, and kind of the reach and the unique positions that we have, and you, I think, really utilizing that to go abroad and kind of continuing spreading truth in terms of independent media there. So I'm really grateful for you that you're kind of leading that charge. And hopefully it could translate to more of us being able to do that with the resources that we have, and being able to grow our network so that, like, that's what I hope to do eventually. Like the soonest I can get back to Africa again, I'm going to carry my camera, and record content, just so like people are able to see like that on the ground. I don't want to say dirty, but the more rugged aspect of what people don't necessarily see in East Africa, but being able to talk to people like right there, so, but yeah, where can people find you?
I do want to say for all my diaspora out there, like, I gotta lean into your individuality, bro. Like, I know we're different. Like, it's everywhere we go. Like, it's not just a US thing. Like, if you're diaspora, you just have a different thing. Like, the black people of a certain country might treat you differently. Like in America, African Americans that like are like, I call them you probably can relate to this, the family reunion black people in the States. They don't really treat us the same way. We have like a different vibe. We like, our parents grew up differently. Usually, like my mom, like we have a really weird background, but like, and I guess at some point my family might have had some kind of money, but like the only thing my mom ever took from them was like how to speak very well. Like that was all she kind of inherited, but even that was a big ass deal. And so therefore, like it wasn't that hard for me to learn how to speak professionally once it came to that point in my life. And like people always like, why did your mom talk like that? Like, what are you talking about? Like,
Right.
I don't know. It's like sometimes it doesn't sound black. I was like, what the fuck does that even mean? She's always talked like this. But like that actually has had a positive impact on her career overall. Like, because she leaned into her individuality, like in her uniqueness. And I feel like diaspora need to do that, like more. Stop being so afraid of it and trying harder and harder and harder to fit in. Like, there's a reason that Hollywood like kind of like basically co-opted every goddamn Bayesian diaspora, like LL Cool J and Will Smith and Megan Good and Cuba Gooding Jr. and his brother. And I mean, bro, like the list of like ASAP Rocky, Rihanna isn't diaspora, but you know what I'm saying? Like, bro, like your vibe is so different and unique.
Yeah.
That like you don't even know it's a thing because some obvious these people are removed culturally from Barbados. And
Right.
like your vibe is so unique that like Hollywood was like, boy, we can make a fucking lot of money off of this shit.
Yeah.
Like, so lean into it,
Yeah.
appreciate it. Yeah, you're gonna be treated, you're treated differently until you then become the standard. That's
Right.
basically what ends up happening.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Where can people find you, man?
You can find me on Twitter at Real Niko House. Uh, Instagram, same thing, Real Niko House. TikTok, same thing. MCSC Network and so MCSC Network on YouTube and HotSpot on YouTube. Also follow HotSpot on Twitter. It's just HotSpot, all one thing on the handle. And Rockfin as well, obviously. It's just at Niko, Niko. Please don't spell my name Nico. It is not Nico. Niko is not short for anything. It is just the male conjugated version of the goddess Nike. That's it. So
Right.
Niko. Like for all you people that tag me directly and literally spell, but Niko with the C, like that's crazy. That y'all got to get that shit together.
Right.
People be in the damn the chats where I'm live tagging me and still putting Nico. It's crazy. But yeah, man. So y'all can find me there.
All right, man. It's good talking with you. Definitely we need to talk again.
Sure.
And yeah, so as we say here, labels are bad. Stay independent. We'll see you soon, guys. Take care.